The thunder shook the old farmhouse so hard that Marcus Cole thought the roof might finally give up and collapse on his head. Stood at the kitchen window and watched the storm tear across his grandfather's cornfield like an angry beast made of wind and lightning at 22 years old. Marcus was alone in the world. His parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago, and his grandfather had followed them into the grave just 6 months later. Now it was just Marcus and 200 acres of Nebraska farmland that he could barely afford to keep. The lightning flashed again, and Marcus saw something that made his heart stop. A ball of fire was falling from the sky. It crashed into the far end of his cornfield with a sound like 1,000 windows breaking at once. Marcus grabbed his flashlight and his grandfather's old shotgun and ran out into the rain. He did not know why he ran toward danger instead of away from it. Maybe it was because he had nothing left to lose. Maybe it was because his grandfather had raised him to help people in trouble. Whatever the reason, Marcus ran through the mud and the rain until he found the crater. It was not a meteor. It was some kind of metal pod, shaped like a teardrop and covered in symbols that Marcus had never seen before. Smoke rose from the fissures. Twisted metal and strange lights flickered inside the wreckage. Marcus approached slowly with his shotgun raised. He heard a sound from inside the pod. It was a weak and pitiful cry, like a wounded animal begging for help. Marcus set down his gun and climbed into the wreckage. What he found inside changed his life forever. There were 2 figures lying in the broken pod. They looked almost human, but not quite. Their skin was pale blue, like the color of a winter sky just before dawn. Their hair was silver white, and their ears came to gentle points. They wore torn clothing that looked like some kind of uniform, now stained with purple blood. The older one opened her eyes and looked at Marcus with terror. Her eyes were gold, like coins catching firelight. She tried to speak, but only a rasping sound came from her throat. The younger one was unconscious and bleeding badly from a wound on her side. Marcus did not hesitate. He pulled off his jacket and pressed it against the younger one's wound to stop the bleeding. The older one flinched away from him, fear and confusion written across her alien face. "I am not going to hurt you," Marcus said softly. "I want to help." He did not know if she could understand him. He did not care. He scooped the younger one into his arms and nodded for the older one to follow. The older alien hesitated for a long moment. In her world, males were precious and protected. They did not venture into danger. They did not carry wounded strangers through storms. They certainly did not show kindness to unknown females who might be enemies. But this strange creature with the warm brown eyes and the gentle hands was doing all of these things. She had no choice but to follow him. Marcus carried the younger alien all the way back to his farmhouse. The older one limped behind him, watching his every move with those golden eyes. He brought them inside and laid the younger one on his kitchen table. For the next several hours, Marcus worked to save her life. He cleaned her wound and stitched it closed with a needle and thread, the same way his grandfather had taught him to stitch up injured farm animals. He wrapped bandages around her torso and checked her breathing every few minutes. The older alien watched him work. She did not understand this creature in her culture, the Valkyrie culture. Males were rare and valuable. They were kept safe in guarded compounds and never allowed to take risks. Females were the warriors, the workers, the protectors. A Valkyrie male would never touch a strange female, let alone save her life. Yet this alien male worked through the night to save her sister when the younger one was stable. Marcus turned his attention to the older alien. She had cuts on her arms and a nasty bruise on her forehead. He approached her slowly, like one might approach a frightened deer. "Can I help you too?" he asked. She did not understand his words, but she understood his tone. She understood the kindness in his eyes. She nodded slowly. Marcus cleaned her wounds and bandaged them with the same gentle care. When he was finished, he realized that both aliens were shivering. They were cold and wet and probably starving. He went to his kitchen and heated up a pot of soup that he had made the day before. He cut thick slices of bread and poured 2 glasses of clean water. He brought the food to the aliens and set it before them. The older ones stared at the food with wide eyes. In Valkyrie culture, the act of a male providing food to an unbonded female was sacred, was the highest form of courtship. It was a declaration that the male wished to bond with the female, to provide for her, to claim her as his own. No Valkyrie male would ever offer food to a stranger, yet this human did it without hesitation, without expectation, without any idea what his actions meant. Older alien looked at her unconscious sister and then back at the food. She was so hungry. They had not eaten in days, not since the slavers had attacked their families. She took the bowl of soup in trembling hands and tasted it. It was warm and rich and full of flavor. Tears began to fall from her golden eyes. Marcus watched her eat with a soft smile on his face. "There's plenty more," he said. "Eat as much as you want." He did not know that he had just performed the most sacred ritual in Valkyrie culture. He did not know that by feeding these lost sisters, he had claimed them as his own according to laws older than human civilization. He only knew that they were hungry and he had food. That was enough for Marcus Cole. He stayed awake for 3 days, watching over the sisters, feeding them, caring for them. When the younger one finally woke up, she looked at Marcus with the same golden eyes as her sister. She looked at the bandages on her body and the warm blankets covering her. She looked at the bowl of soup her sister pressed into her hands, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that she had found something rare and precious. She had found a male worth fighting for. Older sister leaned close to her and whispered in their native tongue, "His name is Marcus," she said. "He saved us, Kale, and he fed us, and he asked for nothing in return." Kale looked at the human male who was now sleeping in a chair by the fire, exhaustion finally claiming him. "Then he is ours," Kale whispered back. "By the old laws, he is ours, Thyra. And one day we will come back for him." Thyra nodded slowly. "One day," she agreed, "we will come back." The days turned into weeks, and the weeks stretched into 40 days of wonder and confusion for the alien. Sisters Thyra and Kale had never known anyone like Marcus. Kohler translator implants slowly learned his language, and soon they could speak with him. Though many human words had no equal in the Valkyrie tongue, the word that confused them most was compassion. Marcus used it often when explaining why he helped them. "It is just compassion," he would say. "You were hurt and I could help, so I helped." But in Valkyrie culture, there was no word for helping strangers without expecting something in return. There was duty to family and loyalty to empire and obligation to caste, but compassion for unknown aliens who fell from the sky? That was something entirely new. Marcus gave them his bedroom and slept on the old couch in the living room when Thyra protested. He simply smiled and said that guests deserved the best bed in the house. Guests. He called them guests, not prisoners or captives or property. He treated them like honored visitors in his home. Every morning, Marcus would wake before dawn and make breakfast for all 3 of them: eggs from his chickens, bread from the local bakery, fresh milk from the neighbor's farm. He would set the food on the table and wait for them to eat before he touched his own plate. This drove Thyra nearly mad with confusion in her world. Males ate first. Males were served by females. Males never cooked or cleaned or worked in the fields. But Marcus did all of these things. He worked in his cornfield during the hot summer days. Coming home covered in dirt and sweat, he fixed broken fences and repaired the old tractor that kept breaking down. He chopped wood for the winter and mended holes in the farmhouse roof, and every evening, He would cook dinner for the sisters and sit with them and ask about their world. Kale was the first to open up. She told Marcus about the Valkyrie Empire, a vast civilization that spanned 1,000 star systems. She told him about their warrior culture, where females trained from birth to fight and protect. She told him about the males, rare and precious, kept safe in guarded compounds where they would never face danger. You would be treated like a prince among my people, Kale said one evening. You would never have to work or fight or cook your own food ever again. Marcus laughed at this, a warm sound that made both sisters feel strange and fluttery inside. That sounds boring, he said. I like working with my hands, and I like cooking, and I especially like sitting here talking with you two. He had no idea how his words affected them among the Valkyrie. A male expressing preference for a female's company was almost like a marriage proposal. Both sisters felt their hearts beating faster. They were falling in love with this impossible human, and they could not stop themselves. On the 20th day, danger came to Marcus's farm. Government satellites had detected the crash of an unknown object. Men in black suits arrived in long cars and asked Marcus questions about strange lights in the sky. Marcus looked them in the eyes and lied without hesitation. Saw lightning hit the cornfield, he said calmly. Nothing unusual at all. The sisters watched from the hidden bunker beneath the barn, a secret room that Marcus's grandfather had built. Long ago, they watched through a tiny window as Marcus faced down the powerful man who could destroy his life. He never wavered. He never showed fear. He protected them with nothing but his words and his courage. When the men finally left, Thyra confronted Marcus with tears in her golden eyes. You lied to protect us, she said. You risked everything for us, but why would you do this? Marcus looked at her with those warm brown eyes that made her feel safe and seen. Because you needed help, he said simply, and I could give it. Thyra wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to explain that he had claimed them by Valkyrie law. She wanted to confess that she and her sister had fallen completely in love with him, but she knew their rescue ship would come soon. She knew they would have to leave, and she did not want to burden Marcus with feelings he might not share. The rescue ship came on the 40th day. It descended from the night sky like a great silver bird, landing in the same cornfield where the sisters had crashed. Valkyrie warriors emerged, tall and fierce females in gleaming armor. They looked at Marcus with suspicion and hostility, but Thyra spoke quickly in her native tongue, explaining that this human had saved them, that he was not to be harmed under any circumstances. The warriors lowered their weapons, but continued to watch Marcus with wary eyes. The time for goodbye had come. Kale hugged Marcus tightly, something that shocked the watching warriors deeply. Males did not receive such affection publicly in Valkyrie culture. I will never forget you, Kale whispered. Never, Marcus Cole. Thyra approached him more slowly, her heart breaking with every step. I must tell you something, she said. When you fed us and when you cared for us, you performed the sacred ritual of my people, and by our law you have claimed us as your bondmates. Marcus blinked in confusion. Claimed you? He repeated. I did not claim anyone, Thyra. You were hungry and I had food, so I shared it. Because that is what people do. Thyra smiled sadly. This beautiful, impossible human did not even understand the gift he had given. He had shown them kindness without condition. He had offered love without expectation. He had proven that somewhere in this vast universe, there existed a species capable of pure compassion. We will return for you, Thyra said firmly. I do not know when and I do not know how, but we will come back, Marcus Cole. And this I promise on my honor as a warrior of the Valkyrie. Marcus watched them walk toward the silver ship. He raised his hand in farewell. I will be here, he called out. I am not going anywhere. The ship rose into the night sky and vanished among the stars. Marcus stood alone in his cornfield for a long time, looking up at the universe that suddenly seemed much larger and much lonelier than before. He did not know that his name would become a legend. He did not know that songs would be written about the human who fed the lost sisters. He did not know that 15 years later, the entire galaxy would change because of one simple act of kindness. He only knew that his heart felt empty now that they were gone, and somewhere deep inside, he hoped that Thyra had meant her promise. He hoped they would come back. 15 years passed like water flowing through open fingers in the great halls of the Valkyrie Empire. A legend had grown from a simple story into something almost religious. They called him the human who gives. The tale spread from world to world, from warrior to warrior, from mother to daughter. A male who had found two lost females, and instead of fleeing or attacking, had fed them with his own hands. A male who had nursed them back to health and asked for nothing in return. A male who had faced down his own government to protect strangers from another world. Said the story was myth. Some said humans could not possibly exist. Surely no species could produce males so brave and so foolish and so impossibly kind. But Thyra and Kale knew the truth. They had lived it. The sisters had returned to their homeworld as heroes, survivors of a slaver attack who had been saved by an alien male. Their story had made them famous, but fame meant nothing to them. They had dedicated their lives to becoming the greatest warriors their empire had ever seen. Thyra rose to the rank of Shield Maiden of the First Circle, the highest honor a female warrior could achieve. Kale stood beside her, equally decorated, equally fierce, equally devoted. They refused every bonding offer that came their way. High caste males from wealthy families, princes from allied worlds, commanders from great fleets. None of them compared to Marcus Cole. None of them could cook a simple meal and make it feel like a feast. None of them could look at a wounded stranger and see someone worth saving. None of them had warm brown eyes that made you feel like the most important person in the universe. The sisters trained and fought and waited. They knew that one day they would return for him. They just needed the right moment. That moment came in the form of a crisis that threatened everything. The Dominion of Wrath had discovered Earth. The Dominion was a slaver empire, ancient and cruel and hungry for new species to harvest. They had learned of the small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy, and they had sent their scout ships to investigate what they found. Had made them very excited. Billions of humans, soft and primitive and completely unaware of the dangers lurking in the darkness between stars. Earth would be the greatest harvest in Dominion history. When this news reached the Valkyrie High Council, a great debate erupted. Some argued that the humans were not worth saving. They were primitive creatures who had barely achieved interstellar travel. They could not defend themselves, and they had nothing to offer the Empire. Why should Valkyrie warriors die for aliens they had never met? Thyra stood before the council in her gleaming armor, her golden eyes burning with fierce determination. 15 years ago, she said, my sister and I crashed on that primitive world, and we were wounded and starving and certain that we would die. But a human found us, and do you know what he did? The council listened in silence. He carried us into his home, Thyra continued. He cleaned our wounds and fed us from his own table and gave us his own bed while he slept on the floor. And when his government came looking for us, he lied to protect us. And he risked everything for two strangers who had fallen from the sky. She paused to let her words sink in. He asked for nothing in return, she said. He did not want payment or favors or political advantage. He helped us because we needed help and he could give it. And that was reason enough for him. Murmurs spread through the council chamber. If one human can show such kindness to strangers, Thyra said, imagine what their entire species might become. And imagine what allies they could be if we helped them now when they needed it most. Kale stepped forward to stand beside her sister. The humans have a word that does not exist in our language, Kale said. They call it compassion, and it means helping others without expecting anything in return, and caring for strangers as if they were family. And it sounds impossible, but I have seen it with my own eyes. The High Council debated for 3 days in the end. They voted to send a war fleet to defend Earth. It was not compassion that convinced them. It was strategy. A species capable of such kindness might indeed make powerful allies, and the Dominion of Wrath had grown too bold and needed to be reminded of Valkyrie's strength. But for Thyra and Kale, strategy did not matter. What mattered was that they were finally going back. What mattered was that Marcus Cole was in danger. What mattered was that they had made a promise 15 years ago, and they intended to keep it. The Warfleet assembled in orbit around the Valkyrie homeworld, 300 warships, each one bristling with weapons, 20,000 warriors, each one ready to fight and die. And at the front of the fleet, aboard the flagship, stood 2 shield maidens who had waited 15 years for this moment. Do you think he remembers us? Kale asked quietly. Thyra looked out at the stars stretching endlessly before them. I do not know, she admitted. 15 years is a long time, and humans live such short lives. And he may have forgotten 2 strange aliens who crashed in his cornfield. But we have not forgotten him, Kale said. No, Thyra agreed. We have not, and we never will. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, racing across the galaxy toward a small blue planet that had no idea salvation was coming toward. A man who had changed the course of history with a bowl of soup and a kind heart toward Marcus Cole, the human who gives, who was about to discover that a simple act of kindness had echoed across the stars and brought an army to fight for his world. The sky burned red on the day the Dominion came to Earth. Marcus Cole was 37 years old now, his brown hair touched with gray at the temples and his face marked by years of hard work under the Nebraska sun. He had turned his grandfather's struggling farm into something wonderful. Old Farmhouse had become the center of a small community. Refugees from the cities had come to him when the invasion began, and Marcus had welcomed them all. He had fed them from his fields and sheltered them in buildings he had constructed with his own hands. Some things never changed. Marcus Cole still fed the hungry and sheltered the lost. He had never married. Though many women had tried to catch his attention over the years, something held him back, a feeling he could not explain. A memory of golden eyes and silver hair, and a promise made under starlight. Now those memories seemed very far away. The Dominion harvester ships hung in the sky like metal mountains. Their smaller vessels swooped down to collect humans like farmers gathering wheat. Earth's new space fleet fought bravely, but they were hopelessly outmatched. The Dominion had been conquering worlds for 10,000 years. Humanity had been flying among the stars for less than a decade. The battle in orbit lasted only hours before the human ships were scattered or destroyed on the ground. Marcus organized the survivors of his community. They had rifles and shotguns and hunting bags. They had tractors converted into crude armored vehicles. They had courage and determination and absolutely no chance of winning. But Marcus Cole had never been good at giving up. When the Dominion ground forces came to his farm, Marcus was ready. He stood in front of the main barn, a hunting rifle in his hands, and 40 frightened civilians behind him. Most of them were children. Marcus had sent the fighters to delay the enemy at the outer fences. He had stayed behind to protect those who could not protect themselves. The Dominion soldiers approached slowly, confident in their victory. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms, each one carrying weapons that could vaporize a human in seconds. Their commander pointed at the barn and gave an order in a language Marcus did not understand, but he understood the meaning well enough. They wanted the humans inside. They wanted to harvest them. You will have to go through me, Marcus said quietly. The Dominion commander laughed. A harsh and ugly sound. He raised his weapon and aimed it at this foolish human who dared to stand against an empire. Marcus, prepared to die. He had lived a good life. He had helped people when he could. He had no regrets except one. He wished he could have seen Thyra and Kale one more time. Then the sky split open with light ships appeared from nowhere. Hundreds of them, sleek and silver and armed with weapons that made the Dominion vessels look like toys. The Valkyrie war fleet had arrived. Marcus watched in stunned amazement as the alien ships tore through the Dominion forces in orbit. Explosions lit up the sky like a second sunrise. Harvester ships crumbled and fell, crashing into the earth miles away on the ground. The Dominion soldiers looked up in confusion and fear. They had not expected resistance. They had not expected anyone to care about this primitive world. Drop pods began falling from the Valkyrie ships, streaking down like shooting stars. They slammed into the ground all around Marcus's farm, throwing up clouds of dirt and debris. The pods opened and warriors emerged. They were tall and fierce, clad in gleaming armor that seemed to glow with inner light. They moved with perfect grace and deadly purpose. The Dominion soldiers tried to fight back, but they were overwhelmed in seconds. Valkyrie weapons roared and Dominion bodies fell. The battle was over before Marcus could fully understand what was happening too. Warriors approached him through the smoke and chaos. They walked differently from the others, with purpose and emotion and something that looked almost like hope. They stopped in front of Marcus and removed their helmets. Golden eyes, silver hair, faces that Marcus had seen in his dreams for 15 years. Thyra? He whispered, his voice breaking. Kale? Thyra smiled, and it transformed her warrior's face into something beautiful and warm. Hello, Marcus Cole, she said. We told you we would return. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. He had thought he would never see them again. He had thought they had forgotten him, but here they were, standing before him like avenging angels, having crossed the galaxy to find him. You came back, he said. You actually came back. Kale stepped forward and touched his face gently, wiping away his tears. You fed us when we were starving, she said. You saved us when we were dying, and you asked for nothing in return. So did you really think we would abandon you? The whole Empire knows your story, Thyra said. They call you the human who gives, and songs are sung about your kindness on 1,000 worlds. And we have waited 15 years to see you again. Marcus laughed through his tears, overwhelmed by emotions he could not name. I just gave you some soup, he said. It was not anything special. Thyra shook her head. It was everything special, she said. You showed us that compassion exists, that kindness exists, that somewhere in this cold universe, there is a species that helps strangers without expecting anything in return. And that knowledge changed everything behind them. The battle continued to rage across the planet. Valkyrie warriors fought Dominion forces in cities and fields and forests. Tide of war was turning. Humanity would survive, but in this moment, standing in the ruins of his grandfather's farm, Marcus Cole did not care about the war or the politics or the fate of nations. He only cared that 2 alien women he had loved for 15 years had crossed the stars to find him, and this time, he was not going to let them go. 6 months after the liberation of Earth, Marcus Cole stood in the great hall of the Valkyrie homeworld. The chamber was vast beyond imagination, with walls of living crystal that pulsed with soft golden light. Thousands of aliens filled the galleries above, watching the ceremony below with fascination and disbelief. A human male was about to be bonded to 2 of their greatest warriors. Nothing like this had ever happened before. Marcus wore simple clothes, black trousers and a white shirt, the same kind of outfit he might wear on a Sunday back in Nebraska. He had refused the elaborate robes the Valkyrie had offered him. He had refused the jewels and the honors and the titles. He was a farmer from Earth, and he would not pretend to be anything else. Thyra and Kale stood before him in ceremonial armor, their golden eyes shining with joy and love and fierce pride. They had fought for this moment when they had announced their intention to bond with Marcus. The High Council had erupted in outrage. He was an alien. They said he was primitive. They said he was a male who fought and worked and refused to be protected. They said, how could such a creature be worthy of two shield maidens of the first circle? Thyra had answered them with words that would be remembered for generations. He fights because he protects, she had said. He works because he provides, and he refuses protection because he would rather die than let others be harmed. So if these qualities make him unworthy, then we do not want to be worthy either. The council had debated for weeks. They had studied human culture and human history. They had interviewed Marcus and tested him and questioned every detail of his story. In the end, they had reached a surprising conclusion. Humanity was not primitive. Humanity was different. Valkyrie had always believed that strength meant separating males from danger. They had always believed that protection meant keeping loved ones locked away, but humans had developed a different kind of strength. Human males and females fought together and worked together and loved together. They protected each other not by hiding but by standing side by side. This was not weakness. This was a strength. The Valkyrie had never imagined. The High Council approved the bonding, and now here Marcus stood, about to become the first human ever bonded to Valkyrie warriors. The ceremony began with the speaking of ancient words. Thyra stepped forward first, her voice ringing clear through the great hall. I am Thyra of House Velthan, she declared, shield maiden of the first circle and defender of the realm, and I claim this male as my bondmate. And I vow to fight beside him and provide for him and love him until the stars themselves grow cold. Kale stepped forward next. I am Kale of House Velthan, she declared, shield maiden of the first circle and slayer of shadows, and I claim this male as my bondmate. And I vow to fight beside him and provide for him and love him until the stars themselves grow cold. The audience waited in hushed anticipation by Valkyrie custom. The male would now speak words of acceptance. He would vow to be protected by his bondmates, to stay safe in their care, to let them fight on his behalf. But Marcus Cole had never been good at following other people's rules. I accept your claim, Marcus said, his voice steady and sure, but I will not promise to stay safe, and I will not promise to let you fight alone, because that is not who I am. Shocked whispers rippled through the crowd. I am a human, Marcus continued. We do not hide while our loved ones face danger, and we do not sit idle while others work. And we do not accept protection we have not earned. He looked at Thyra and Kale with all the love in his heart. So I offer you a different vow, he said. I vow to stand beside you, not behind you. And I vow to fight beside you, not apart from you. And I vow to love you as an equal partner, not as a possession to be guarded. He took their hands in his, one warrior on each side. 15 years ago, I fed two strangers because they were hungry and I had food, Marcus said. I did not know I was starting a legend, and I did not know I was changing the galaxy, and I did not know I was finding the love of my life. But I know it now. Tears streamed down Thyra's face. Though she would deny it later, Kale was smiling so wide it looked like her face might break. You asked for nothing, Thyra whispered. You gave everything and asked for nothing in return. That is what love is. Marcus said simply, you give without counting the cost. And you ask for nothing. Accept the chance to give more. The elder, who presided over the ceremony, had never seen anything like this. The vows were wrong, the customs were broken, the traditions were shattered, and yet somehow, standing before him were three people who clearly loved each other with a depth that transcended culture and species and the vast distances between stars. "The bond is witnessed," the elder announced, his voice thick with emotion. "The bond is sealed. And what has been joined here today? Let no force in the universe tear apart." The great hall erupted in cheers. Valkyrie warriors stomped their feet and raised their weapons in salute. Human diplomats in the audience wiped their eyes and clapped until their hands hurt. The galaxy had just witnessed the birth of something new, the first alliance between humans and Valkyrie, sealed not by politics or treaties, but by love. Later that night, at the feast celebrating the bonding, the Valkyrie ambassador rose to make a toast. "When we first learned of humanity," she said, "we thought they were primitive and weak and not worth our time. But we were wrong, because they possess something we never understood until a farmer from Nebraska showed two lost sisters what it meant to be cared for." She raised her glass toward Marcus. "You call it compassion," she said. "This gift of helping strangers without expecting reward. And we have no word for it in our language, but we are learning. And humanity is teaching us that true strength is not in the ability to conquer, but in the courage to love." She smiled. "Something rare for a Valkyrie of her rank. The galaxy is vast and cold and often cruel," she said. "But it is a little warmer now that humans are part of it. And it will be warmer still as our peoples grow together." Marcus sat between his bondmates, Thyra on one side and Kale on the other. He looked around the great hall at the thousands of faces watching him, human and alien alike. He thought about his grandfather's farm and the cornfield where two strangers had fallen. From the sky, he thought about the bowl of soup that had started everything, and he smiled because Marcus Cole had never wanted to change the galaxy. He had only wanted to help people who needed helping. He had only wanted to feed people who were hungry. He had only wanted to love and be loved in return. And somehow, impossibly, wonderfully, that had been enough. That had been everything.